The death toll involving the shooting that took place at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Broward County, Florida, is at 17 casualties so far. We know that 17 people have been shot and killed by the 19-year-old gunman. Now, we're uncertain as to whether or not that death toll will rise. However, there are more people getting treatment at the hospital right now. At least 14 more individuals are injured. What we also know is that after an hour of being at large, the suspect is now in custody. We do know that he's a former student at this high school, and he was expelled for disciplinary reasons. Apparently, at one point, administrators at the school were concerned about other students' safety, and they were concerned that this student posed a threat, so he wasn't allowed to come onto campus with a backpack. He would brag about his guns on social media. He would share photos of his guns on social media. We know that he had an AR-15 style semi-automatic rifle with several magazines. We're uncertain as to whether or not he had other weapons on him at the time of the shooting. And we will fill you in as we get more details on the shooting. Obviously, this is still developing.
An AR-15, you don't say. Mass shooter and NRA's best friend, an AR-15. You don't need an AR-15 to go hunting. You need an AR-15 if you want to murder people. So 12 people died inside the school building, 2 outside the school building, 1 dead in the street, and 2 died at the hospital.
So what I found interesting about this story was the fact that he was a former student, and based on multiple interviews that I read from current students at the school, everyone would talk about how if ever there was gonna be a mass shooting on campus, it would be from him. He would be the one to carry it out. And one student was quoted as saying, and I'm paraphrasing his quote, everyone predicted that the shooting would happen.
Everyone but the government. The government thought, no, who cares? Give them a gun. Give everybody a gun. We don't care if people are mentally unstable or if they have a political agenda, or we don't care what any of their motives are. We don't care oftentimes if they were convicted of domestic abuse. There's a lot of things we don't care about. We don't care if they're on the terrorist watch list. We don't care if they want to have bump stocks so they can murder people more efficiently, AR-15s. So many of the mass shooters have used. Armor-piercing bullets, we don't care, we don't care, we don't care. Your kids got shot and killed down in Florida, died in the street, some of them, some inside their schools. You know what the government officials and the politicians and the NRA and the gun manufacturers say? We don't care. We're still making money, so your kids are gonna keep on dying.
This is terrifying. And it's all too common in the US. And to be quite honest with you, when the story first broke, I was uncertain as to whether or not it would make headlines, because shootings happen every single day in the United States. I mean, obviously this shooting led to a higher death toll. It happened on a high school campus. But shootings like this, not like this, but shootings happen every single day in the United States. And we have become so incredibly desensitized to them. But the reality is, there are people, myself included, who live in fear. You don't know who's gonna strike next, when they're gonna strike. You don't know who is gonna lose their temper and who might be carrying a gun at the time. I understand that people have a constitutional right to bear arms. I understand that. But every constitutional right has limitations. And while gun owners, responsible gun owners, should have the liberty to have firearms, I believe that all Americans should have the liberty of living in a safe country where they're not fearful that their children are gonna be shot dead at any moment. When are we gonna value that form of liberty? I feel like I feel hopeless when we cover these stories, because it doesn't matter what we do, doesn't matter what we say, the outcome is always the same. I thought there might be a little bit of change after the mass shooting that happened in Vegas, where 58 people were gunned down. I thought at the very least we would ban the bump stocks, but we couldn't even do that.
And the NRA, in their usual way, lied and said, oh yeah, we'll help you ban bump stocks. And then a couple of days later, when nobody was paying attention, they're like, of course we were lying. We've got an extra nickel to make from bump stocks. We're all representing gun manufacturers, and they love these shootings. Love them. Gun sales go on. up after these shootings because everybody's afraid, just like Anna said. So then they pump more money into our corrupt politicians, and you know how it goes. You want to end all the mass shootings and have some degree of sane gun control? Get money out of politics. Because when the NRA is allowed to buy politicians, what they spent over, what, $50 or $70 million in the last election cycle? Well, then you're never gonna have gun control because we have private financing of elections. Okay, look, I'll give you some quick stats here to give you context. So the US makes up less than 5% of the world's population, but we're number one. We hold 31% of the global mass shooters. And so if you look at graphic 67 here, by the way, coming in at number 2, the Philippines, also led by an authoritarian leader who encourages shootings. Hey, look at that, number 3, Russia, also an authoritarian leader who is right-wing and encourages violence. And then Yemen, which is in the middle of a disastrous, epic civil war, is number 4. It's insane. We dwarf all of these guys. 5% of the world's population, 31% of the mass shooters. All right, deaths from gun violence in 2018, with only 6 weeks in, 1,806 people are dead from just gun violence. Mass shootings, more stats here, 383 mass shootings in 2016. I don't know if you know this, the year only has 365 days, more than 1 mass shooting per day. In 2017, it dropped a little bit, 346 out of 365 days. And 2018 so far, 30 out of 45 days have had a mass shooting. Deaths from mass shootings in 2017, 14,000 people killed in mass shootings alone last year. That is almost 5 9/11s in 1 year. And for 9/11, we invaded countries, some right countries, some wrong countries, killed arguably millions of innocent civilians in our anger and frustration. But we have 5 9/11s every single year here in America, and we're not allowed to do anything about it because our politicians get bribed by the NRA.
And it's not just the fact that we lack certain regulation that would make all the sense in the world to pass. It's also the fact that we don't enforce regulation that we currently have, or the regulation that we have is so watered down and so incredibly weak that it doesn't function the way that it's supposed to. So I'll give you a very specific example. There was the Texas shooter who shot up a church, and it was a former military member who was dishonorably discharged from the military for bad conduct. The military is supposed to report to the FBI when someone is dishonorably discharged from the military, because that individual should not be able to pass a background check if they choose to purchase a gun. Well, it turned out that the military had this insane backlog, years and years of backlog, where they were not reporting to the FBI what they were supposed to report to them. And so after that shooting happened, guess what they did? They rushed to report over 4,000 individuals dating back years ago who were dishonorably discharged and should not be able to pass a background check. So for those of you who are saying, well, we have the background check, I mean, what more could you want? It doesn't work. It doesn't work because it's a watered down, nonsensical version of a regulation that we should really have. And by the way, the FBI is only given 3 days to do that background check, which is not enough time. Not enough time. I mean, well, people can't wait longer than 3 days to purchase their guns. So anyway.
And then if they don't make it in time, they say give them the gun. Whether it was going to turn out that they were violent or criminals or terrorists or mentally deranged, it doesn't matter. Give them the gun. Give them the gun. Give them the gun. Why does it have to be 3 days? Well, that's because the NRA put pressure on politicians. Hurry up! Don't. Whatever you do, I got to make an extra cent from that AR-15 I'm going to sell. And if that AR-15 murders a lot of people, as it often does, and helps in facilitating those murders, well, so what? I already made that dime. Maximize profit at all costs, including your kids' lives. If you become a member of the Young Turks, you'll be saying,
you know, I'm like a smart person.
So do it right now, tytnetwork.com/join. Get the whole Young Turks show every day.